What's up, family? Welcome to episode 8, Shadow Work. I'm your host, Bobby, and welcome to Men vs. Ego. I have the privilege to introduce a coworker, a friend for sure, that just happened, and a good guy that knows how to turn adversities into triumphs. And he's a mentor. He's a good coach. But I can keep going on. Without further ado, Mr. Joey Chacon.
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast. I had my own, I kind of fell off, but it's been coming back on, getting my stuff out. It's been kind of a reinvigorating, I guess is the word. So, yeah, it's excited to be here, man. So,
Well,
thanks.
thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and helping me out with certain advice that you gave me about how to work the camera and the mics and your suggestions. And appreciate that, man. And honestly, when you mentioned shadow work, that caught my eye because not that many people know about shadow work and how it changes us from the inside out, literally. Um,
Yeah.
but before I continue, you want to give us like a quick synopsis, like what shadow work is for you?
Uh, well, I don't want to say what it is for me, but I would say uh, well, I wouldn't say, but like shadow work is like the process of exploring and integrating your unconscious parts of yourself, right? So it's often called the shadow, right? So it was a term popularized by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, who believed that the shadow consists of parts of our personality that like we repress or we deny, and often because they don't align with our the image that we want to project to others. So um, and it's just that's just kind of what it is, right? So we have a
Yeah.
lot of hidden parts about us that we have suppressed and we don't want to face. So the shadow and integrating those things uh, can be very beneficial, right? So um, there's these aspects that I'm kind of mentioning here is that like negative traits, right? Your emotions, your traumatic memories that you have of your life, but those kinds of things also involve like positive qualities, right? That you have suppressed, like your creativity or your assertiveness. A lot of
Yes.
times, individuals allow themselves to be walked all over because of something that happened, when they were growing up or um, something like that. So, by facing like these hidden aspects of yourself, you can bring them to your consciousness and understand their role in your life, what they like, how big and profound they are in your life, and ultimately, integrating your shadow achieves what's greater self awareness and overall personal growth. So it's a good thing to practice, but it's like you said, it's not something a lot of people know about. So, but it's very interesting work, and I've actually started. I've known about it. I've dabbled in it, but I've seriously taken shadow work. I've taken shadow work seriously for the past probably like a month, and unknowingly I've been doing it for the past 2 years. But now I'm doing it in a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a more with a purpose, right? So
Yeah.
um, and with more guidance, right? Because I went out and purchased a shadow work journal, and I started kind of following the doing the reading and the prompts and the journaling and all these things that, and we'll talk about that. I'm sure we'll get into that uh, later on in the episode, but
No,
um,
for sure.
yeah, it's been life changing, and definitely would recommend anybody that wants to, grow and be self-aware, definitely look into it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I know we talked about doing the podcast like a week ago, maybe a couple days ago, almost a week ago.
Yeah.
And the first thing you said was just about shadow work. I'm like, oh my gosh, like for real, dude. I'm down. Let's do about shadow work. Let's tell the audience what shadow work is, what shadow work does. You said yesterday in our little practice speech, and I seen the one you're talking about Jordan Peterson, how um, um, a man should be dangerous but yet kind at the same time, and that's how we
Right.
what do you call it? A weak man is going to get run over all the time. Like if he's
Right.
incapable of being dangerous, then he's just going to get run over. But if he can
Right.
somehow input that shadow self of him, but still tame it, like keep the reins on and not let it go out of
Yeah.
control, that's you're capable of being dangerous, but yet you're still capable of like
Right.
controlling yourself. You know when to use it and when not to use it.
Yeah. And just to clarify, when we talk about being dangerous, being a dangerous man, we don't mean like, oh, they run around and they, beat people up and, shoot guns and, do crazy stuff. What we mean by that is you have the capability, um, to do those things. Like, and again, it falls back into being assertive, you know, really standing up for yourself, and, uh, you know, possessing the ability, that you could in a moment, switch because, as men, we feel that role of being a protector. We provide for our families. We protect our families. We protect our loved ones, people we care about, right? And you see examples of it all the time, especially in the Army, right? Our profession, of men that do this, right? And they've given their lives, the ultimate sacrifice, but they had the capability to do those things and step into dangerous situations, knowing they might not come out on the other side, but they knew that that's what they had to do. And it's courage and bravery, all those things that you know what that means. But yeah, being dangerous, Jordan Peterson definitely. But what he's really talking about is integrating your shadow, right? Integrating those deep, dark things that you don't like about yourself, or that. I don't know if you've ever experienced, and you can answer this, but like, have you ever experienced when you're thinking like the craziest thoughts, right? Like, I mean, just outlandish stuff, and you're like, whoa, am I really thinking that? And then of course your self-control kicks in, is like, all right, that's obviously not logical or reasonable, so let's not go there. But you thought about it, right? Like you know, and if push comes to shove, you could enact those things if you needed to. But you have self-control, you have that integration to where you don't have to, right? So, um, yeah. So have you ever had like crazy thoughts, man? Or you know
No,
what I'm
of
talking about?
course.
Like,
Of course.
yeah, like,
Actually, the second chapter, beside the intro and what the hell is shadow work or what is shadow work, I like how you just rolled right into the next chapter, man. It's you mentioned how do you shadow work at work. But yeah,
right,
to answer your question, yes, I have had crazy thoughts, but with the books I've read, I've also I know I'm the observer of my thoughts, not my thoughts
right,
themselves. So I see a thought, and I'm like, how can I see the thought if it's me? So there's something
right.
else. The I am basically.
Mm,
Not to quote
right,
quick scripture, but the tree that was on fire, the I
mm,
am that I am. So basically, the I am inside of me. I see the thoughts.
right,
Doesn't mean I have to react to the thoughts, but I know they're
right.
there. So yeah, man.
Yeah. So, sorry, got a little something in my throat there. But yeah, it requires a lot of a lot of self reflection, right? Like that's how you do the shadow work, right? So it's looking at your triggers, your reactions, and your patterns of behavior, right? So so say you have a habit that you just don't like, right? And I'll just use this example that and it plagues a lot of men, to include myself. The addiction to pornography, right? It's become such a what's the word? Like such a common thing in our society now, right? Like, but people don't like men don't understand how negative and how bad it is for your being. Um,
Your
it
psyche.
disassociates you're right, your psyche. Yeah, there we go. Your psyche, how bad it is. And that's breaking free from that. Cause believe it or not, like pornography can ruin a lot of relationships. And a lot of men struggle with that, right? Cause it's, you're disassociating from your current relationship or whoever you're with, and they out of body experience. Well, not in that sense, but you're imagining that you're in that act with that person, right?
Yeah.
And then when truly you shouldn't be, right? Now, I'm not against, I don't judge people, for, people that, like I said, I've dealt with it and deal with it myself time to time, but it's understanding why certain things about yourself, like those patterns, why they happen, right? So, um, why are you addicted to those types of things? Because, you're not getting the love that you desire. What does that stem from? And you start digging, peeling back the layers of the onion and figuring out why you feel that way, or why you feel the need to, um, you know, consume that kind of content. Are you It's like you're missing something in your life, right? So, and that's what, it's about, right? Shadow work, understanding, yourself, why certain things about yourself and others. So, one thing I read was that, um, in your self reflection is, I don't know, you probably got someone at work. You don't have to answer this, but I know I do, right? People that they do certain things and it really like, there's no way other way to say this, but they piss me off. They're like, man, what are you doing? Like, why? Um, and this is the negative side. I'll get to the positive side in a second, but the negative side is, why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? Like, what are you thinking? And your emotions are triggered, right? Like, and I hate saying triggered because it sounds so millennial-ish
Yeah.
or Gen Z, I guess. Um, but what it is the way you react to that person's behavior is they're bothering you because it's a reflection of something you've done in your past, or something you might currently do, and it's in your subconscious or unconscious. You don't really know. But on the other side of that too is you see somebody that works hard, is a go getter and doing all the things they're supposed to be doing, and you're like, man, I want to be like that person, right? And again, that's another, self projection onto them. Like you want to be those things, um, but what's stopping you from being those things, right? And those are questions you got to ask yourself. So, um,
I hear
yeah,
you,
so
man.
yeah, that's self reflection is huge. It's probably one of the biggest parts of it.
Would you say that you've incorporated some of the shadow work aspect at work? I know you just gave us an example, but anytime recently?
Um, like at work or just in general? I think you cut out.
Yeah, no. At work,
Oh, okay.
for sure, because we're going by the chapters, and right now we're at chapter 3. Uh,
Okay.
why is it necessary to do shadow work, or how do we do shadow work at work, or how to incorporate shadow work at work, basically? With
Oh, okay. Um, so for work, at least, because again, I think for us, work is a little different, right? Because work in the army is our life. Like that's our lifestyle. That's what we do day in, day out. We do it no matter what, right? Rain, shine, sleet, snow. We work long hours. I mean, it's our life. We day in, day out. We don't just leave the office and clock out and say, okay, I'm done. I'm not in the Army today or for the next 8 hours. No, that is your life. So, um, I don't, I call it work. We call it work, but realistically, that's just our daytime life, right? That's our lifestyle. Um, but incorporating shadow at work is definitely, uh, for instance, just kind of, well, it's hard because this is about yourself, right? These are things you're trying to fix about yourself. So I think for me, the thing I really key into is controlling my emotions, because that one's like, we talk about emotional intelligence and all that stuff. But like when things don't go a certain way, things don't go the way you had planned, or, everything at work seems to be falling apart. You plan this whole big, exercise or training thing or event, and it just seems like it's falling apart. For me, I acknowledge I acknowledge my emotions. I have them. I get angry. I get upset. Um, and just the normal feelings of when things don't go your way, right? But I acknowledge them, and uh, that, I give myself a time limit of how do I say this? Like, I acknowledge my feelings, but only for a certain amount of time. Like, after that, it's okay. That's over with. Let's move on. Let's fix the problem and let's get back to work, right? Because to me, um, you know, I guess, wallowing in my own sorrows or my own emotions is not going to get me anywhere, right? So I've acknowledged that part. I've recognized that, and I've started to, just really that time limit is important, right? And I talk about like, um, and another I guess example is dealing with like rejection, right? Like, and I'll just use my example for the workplace, but this could be for anything in life. So for instance, I like being open, pretty honest individual. So for promotion this year, my OML number, and for those that are not in the military, it's a order of merit list number, and it's kind of how the Army ranks you for promotion, right? It's out of the eligibility or the pool of people eligible. And I literally landed right in the middle of the pack, but it was such a number it was disappointing to me because I hadn't managed my own expectations, and I was like, man, I'm going to do better this year. And I didn't. Right. And the first day I saw it, I was like, wow, I got upset. It's just natural to feel that way. When you were expecting something and it didn't go your way. Um, you know, and I decided, I was like, okay, I'll give myself the day to be upset, to kind of process how I'm feeling right now. And then tomorrow I'm going to come back to work and I'm going to get back at it. Right. And that's what I did. So, but I also, the good things that came out of that were, I was on the fence about starting my master's degree in business management. And I was like, man, I really don't want to go to school, more school. I don't want to do more schooling. Like, I'm kind of burned out on it. But experiencing that kind of disappointment, and rejection, I made the decision, you know what? I have 3 years before I retire. And you know what? I'm going to make the best of this next 3 years. So I'm going to start my master's. And it's not because I want to get promoted, because at the end of the day, my 20 years is 20 years and I'm going to move on. Right. But what am I going to move on with? I'm going to have a whole master's degree. Right. And I think, that situation of my OML number, feeling rejected and all that, it drove me or pushed me to make the decision, hey, go ahead and just improve yourself. Keep improving yourself, because you know what? That's what's going to be best for you at the end. And how do I set myself up for retirement, for exiting the Army when my time comes? And that was the decision I make. So, that was a personal growth moment, right? That was, accepting, the part that I was going, I was feeling a certain sort of way about it. And then finally coming out on the other side with like, okay, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to do all right. So yeah, there you go. There's a kind of an example there. So
No, thank you so much for sharing that experience, man. And the majority of the people that are the subscribers or the people that are going to eventually watch this episode, for them, they don't really know that much about the process of promotion and all that goes on. So I appreciate you explaining that. For me, shadow work, I got started with shadow work when I went through a thing called ego death. Ego death, also known as dark night of the soul, is when you are hurt so much emotion. I'm not talking about depression. I'm talking about you're hurt for a certain situation in your life that hurt you so bad that your I know we're talking about Carl Jung, your id, your super ego, and your ego, like they go through this dark time. Basically, you yourself go to this dark time that it's like your ego just dies away and you're left with your pure self, but it doesn't feel right because society has made you into like this, molded you into this, for example, this person that has Nike shoes, that wears Patagonia sweaters, that goes downtown, drives a Porsche, or whatever society sees you at, that's what you are to you. But when you go to that dark night of the soul, it's like a clean slate, and it hurts so bad though. Something has to happen for you, for your ego to trigger. That's what it's called, ego death, and it dies. A lot of Buddhists and Zen masters, they know about what I'm talking about, the ego death. John Kabat-Zinn, Eckhart Tolle, the Tao Te Ching, they speak about similar circumstances to what I'm talking about. The Bhagavad Gita, which is another great book on spirituality. And
right.
but yeah, man, it took me a while to get over that. It maybe, I want to say, a good 6 months to a year for me to really get back on my feet and realize, what am I? Who am I?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's when I got into books. I got into literature. I started reading. I started doing research. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And not to say like, not to cut you off, man, but not to say like if God forbid, my dog passes away, I'm going to be sad,
Right.
but it has to be a big event in your life that causes you to lose your ego for that moment in time and reevaluate, who are you? What are you? It doesn't happen to everybody. Some people go with all their lives without having a dark night of the soul. But if you ever get a dark night of the soul, ego death, that's when you're quote unquote reborn, right? You're new. I know you mentioned, hopefully you can get into it for a little bit. Yesterday you mentioned, if I would have met you 6-7 years ago, you're not the same person you are now. You're more mature now. You're more discreet. You use better discernment, better judgment. Back then you were cutthroat, dare I say, maybe narcissistic. But yeah, you let us know, man. I
Definitely.
know I shared a little bit, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, yeah, very, very, very true. And honestly, what you experienced in your ego death, right? And I'm not too familiar with that, but I could tell you that so we also call that a significant emotional event, right? Like a C, that's what they call it, like C. And when the pain is so great that, well, what is it, like, most people aren't willing to change until most people aren't willing to change the thing they don't like about themselves, or until the pain of whatever that thing is hurts so bad that then you're like, all right, I have to do something. I have to act. Right. And that's kind of, I guess, what you were describing there, but like, without even knowing, you were doing shadow work kind of because of the event, it triggered it. I guess
Yeah.
what I guess that's what I would say. It triggered you into, all right, man, I have past traumas. I got to start healing. You got to start acknowledging and processing past experience, and how you cope with those experiences. And then, of course, you know, dissecting and analyzing all the things that happened in that thing and what part did you play or didn't play in it. How could you have, you go into those thought process. But the major thing is what you kind of mentioned there at the end was embracing all the parts of yourself, accepting both the light and the shadow aspect. And that's essential to, just being a human being, right? We're humans, um, and that's what we're supposed to do. But
Yeah.
doing shadow work, and again, like, and kind of going back to where I was, kind of a different person. I would even dare say that back in 2020 was really the rebirth of myself. I had a really rough year in 2019, and when you know, I would tell you this: I hate it just for a work thing. And I'll be completely honest here. When I left my assignment in 2019, I hated soldiers. I did not want to be around soldiers. I didn't care about I didn't want anything to do with soldiers because I had been through an incident where I felt betrayed, felt where I put myself out there to, you know, I did a lot of wrong, right? I'll admit that. But in the process, I didn't do anything wrong to the soldiers, but the situation I was in was definitely not in line with Army values, right? But I felt like those soldiers betrayed me. I was sour. I was bitter. I was angry. I didn't want anything to do with anybody. It took me going to actually equal opportunity advisor school to start really figuring things out. And in that course, you do like a month of learning about yourself, right? And I guess in a sense, that's shadow work, right? Kind of embracing the all parts of yourself, and shadow work. The goal isn't to fix, or eliminate those bad things or the shadow, as we're going to call it, but it's, to integrate it in a way that allows you for a more balanced, authentic self. And I went through that just much like you. I ended up PCSing or moving to Japan for, another job, for that job specifically. And it's where I met my wife. And that's really where things really started to change for me. So about back to 2020, right? So what was that 4 years ago? Completely different person. I did a 180, and that event, it took me a good significant time to finally let go, to get to the point where I could talk about it and not get upset, right? And I think once you're able to talk about a past trauma, and this is just my opinion, I'm not a doctor, I don't hold any degrees or anything in this sort of realm, but once you are able to talk about an event that happened to you and you're not upset, right? I think you have healed from that, because I don't know about you, but there's during your period of coming back, getting back on your feet, you probably sit and stew on whatever happened to you or whatever situation you went through. And you'd be like, man, and you would get angry again or upset or whatever those emotions you were feeling. For me, it was a lot of anger and bitterness. And, and like now I can, maybe in a later podcast, I'll get into more into that, but I can talk about that situation. And I know that, I'm not going to get angry or upset because I've healed from it. I've learned from it and I've grown from it. And those are the positives that came out of that situation for me. So,
Yeah.
and I can be more myself. And I think that's the best, for me.
If we could, there's a book I like to throw out there. It's called The Power of Now. If you ever get a chance to read it, I mentioned it in my previous 2 episodes with my friends and family about, he speaks about alchemizing, be the alchemist of your pain and turn it into something positive. Alchemy is basically turning base metal into gold, basically.
If you're talking, I can't hear you.
We'll just edit that out.
Okay.
Yeah. So that book, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle talks about the alchemy, make your negative thoughts into positive thoughts, make your shadow self into your better self. That's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
The art of alchemy, like I said, it's called turning base metal into gold. So trying to find any metal and try to change the elements and turn it into gold. It's a great book. It taught me a lot about spirituality. I recommend it to anybody. But I just wanted to add that point right there, man. And but if it's okay with you, we can go on to the next a couple chapters, so we don't stay
Yeah.
on off topic. Anything else you want to add before we do?
No, I think we pretty much covered a good about a little sharing and a little, sharing our experiences and then uh,
Yeah.
how
Okay.
we've healed from those. So yeah, I think that's a
For sure.
good ending point there. Yeah.
The next chapter is why is it necessary? And I think we already talked about this. Why is it necessary to do shadow work? Um, so basically, for the betterment of ourselves, right? I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to add anything to that.
So it's yeah. I mean, it's to yeah. I don't know what else to add to that. I think we covered that pretty deep in there, but
Yeah.
shadow work is definitely it takes a certain amount of patience, self-compassion, and the willingness to dive into your uncomfortable or your painful emotions, right? And I think anybody that's watching or listening to this, there's various ways of doing that. So, we already kind of hit on like self-reflecting. Another one is journaling, which I started
Yeah.
doing and really reflecting on those really tough questions. And then, like you can reflect on things like, for instance, let's see here, like, because I don't know. Do you journal? Do you journal at all? Do you do any little doodling,
No.
journaling?
Thanks for asking. Though I don't journal, but I do occasionally sleep with frequencies. And
Mhm.
I was thinking about buying tuning forks. So basically, every these there's these special forks that people like sound bowls. If you ever seen sound bowls before, where it just goes
Mhm.
and people just
Yeah.
they meditate with that. That's what I do when I'm feeling
Okay.
overloaded with so many things around me, work, life, you name it. I do meditate though, but I don't journal.
Well, I mean, you can definitely maybe start, and here's what I'll say about journaling, right? So, when you journal, you write down your thoughts, right? And then you can start reflecting on those behaviors, your triggers, and those patterns that we talked about, right? It helps you bring your unconscious thoughts into your conscious awareness. So you usually do like you ask yourself like deep questions like what do I dislike about others and why does it trigger me, right? What parts of myself do I try to hide or ignore? And you ask those your questions and then you start to kind of reflect on that, right? So that's where journaling comes in and you can write it down. And then something I like to do is, and I do it all the time, like I'll write some stuff down and then I won't journal for a little bit and then I'll come back to it and I'll open my journal. I'm like, oh, wow. Um, that was some pretty deep self reflection there. And, you gain some insight about yourself, right? So, you examine your projections, notice when you criticize or judge others too harshly, right? And it's something that I've caught myself doing multiple times. And it could be a reflection of something within yourself that you haven't accepted yet, right? So that's why journaling is believe it or not, it's not just for teenage girls, writing about, oh, Johnny at high school was so cute today. No, this is journaling with a purpose of self growth and
Yeah.
examining yourself, right? So it's definitely
Um,
a good way to.
to just a quick add to your journaling message that you had. Um, a lot of people don't might not know the book Meditations. I mention it all the time. It's a book
Mhm.
by Marcus Aurelius, but it's not really a book. So I would dare say it's his like journal, his personal journal,
Right.
but it like little notes that was made into
Mhm.
a book called Meditations. So just FYI, great book, great journal book,
Right.
if you will, because it's not written like a book. It's written like little passages that Marcus Aurelius
Right.
wrote himself for himself.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
get
and
what
he
you're
probably
saying,
did a
man.
lot. Yeah, he probably did a lot of. Probably didn't know what shadow work was back then, obviously during his time. But now journaling is to me journaling is especially when I'm angry or like something happens and I'm upset. Like that's a good way for me to jot my thoughts down and then kind of come back later to them and say, okay, why did I feel this way? Let me examine, what's really going on here
Yeah.
and really
They
get to the
they knew
root
what
of
an
this,
atom
right?
was though.
Yeah. How? Let's not get into that.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
aliens.
different topic, but just fun
Yeah.
fact. The next chapter would be is shadow work the same as fighting ego? How would you come about that, man? We think it's the same thing as fighting ego?
Well, I can't really answer that because I'm not really sure what fighting ego is. Maybe you fill me in and I can see if there's a correlation between the two.
When someone tells you something that challenges you, maybe you have a cousin, a friend of a friend, a coworker, you name it. You can put any person that you want in there, that you're talking about the same topic, right? And you say, no, shadow work is this. Or for example, you like games, right? Oh, this
Yeah.
PC is better for this because it has so many gigabytes or so many RAM that it can hold for better quality gaming, streaming, and all that. While the other guy's like, absolutely not. This is better than that one because of such and such. And you feel like, oh, you're
Right.
challenging me, really? So that you know your your opinion, I guess you want to call it, is
Right.
being challenged by this other guy, this other person,
Mhm.
and something inside he's like, no, I'm gonna prove you wrong. I'm gonna do that. I guess that's the ego saying, no, I'm gonna one up you, man. I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
You're crazy.
Right.
Well, shadow work is more like what we talked about earlier. You might not like the guy, you just punch him in the face. Oh yeah, boom. Or
Right.
flip a desk. You're crazy, man. Of course not. This PC is better. You can't control your shadow. Your the guy that it's inside your head. I don't want to keep kick a dead horse, but basically what we talked about earlier. I would compare the two. That I wouldn't say that they're the same. You mentioned Carl
Mhm.
Jung, and I'll let you add more to it. But yesterday we talked about the ego, the super ego, and the id, right?
Right.
Um, the shadow work has to be somewhere in there, don't you think?
Yes. But I think you're got to look at a couple things. Like, I think your ego, and I could be completely off base with this because again, I'm not a doctor or clinical psychologist. I don't know. I'm just another dude trying to get through life. But I feel what you described to me just now is that, fighting your ego is you're contending with outside things, right? Your emotions towards others, whereas shadow work is more of a self thing, like a self recognizing, your that emotion that you just experienced and why you felt that way, and then reaching back. So that I think that's the key term is that you're reaching back to a past trauma or, why do you feel inclined to one up someone? Like what do you get from that? Was it because when you were growing up as a kid, your father, it's just I'm just making a scenario here is that your father always told you you were wrong and he was always right, even though he was wrong, right? And as a kid, you just had to accept it. But now that you're older, and you're, talking to someone who is the same age as you or whatever, uh, you know, you can stand up and be like, oh, this is better or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's where the shadow work and you go, oh, well, when I was growing up as a kid, this is the kind of things I experienced. Okay, how can I cope or deal with this in the future when it shows its face again, right? When these type of emotions come into play. So I would say they're closely related because they do deal with the psyche and how to, interactions with other people. But I think it's, one's more of a, dealing with outside emotions, people triggers from outside, and then one's from getting to the root. Of why you felt that way. So
That
because
yeah.
yeah, so believe it or not, like, and this might play into it, but I teach a class or I've taught a class called Values, Attitudes, and Beliefs, right? Where your values, the things that you value in life, kind of shape your attitude, and then your attitude towards things triggers your behaviors, right? So I think it kind of falls in line with that, maybe. Like I said, I don't know, not a doctor, don't have a degree in this, not super
Disclaimer.
well versed in it. Disclaimer, I am not a
Disclaimer.
doctor.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is just two men talking about shadow work and what we know about it. So
yeah, we might have very limited knowledge because this is one of the subjects is like super deep, and it can be dangerous. I think, what was I watching? Might have been a couple of days ago, where men or people in general who are criminals, murderers, rapists, people that do bad things, right? Those are people that have embraced their shadow, but were not able to integrate it, right? Balance it, right? Integration of your shadow is balancing that out. And they have really become dangerous people without the control, right? Control is the key there. Like, you have the capability to be dangerous, a dangerous person, but you also have that self-control and that self-awareness that you don't have to be. Where these individuals, they just go all out because they haven't successfully integrated their shadow into their consciousness. So
nicely said, man.
Yeah. Well, thank
For
you.
sure.
Thank you. But a lot of people, and I don't know if you noticed this, I don't know how many with this newer generation of soldiers coming in. And I know I sound like the old guy. Oh, this new generation's terrible, I mean, are they really? I don't think they are. I think they're going through life just like we have, and it's a different time in society, right? But
yeah,
I will say that it seems, and it's just my observance, right? It seems that this, to me, again, old guy comment here coming in, is that today's generation doesn't know how to cope with difficulties in life, right? Like, we don't have the same difficulties. Obviously, we have different life experiences, right? So if my phone breaks, okay, no big deal. I can go a couple days without my phone. Not an issue, right? You get one of these newer, 19, 18-year-old, 20-year-olds, their phone breaks, their world is over. Did you see the outcry of people when TikTok was banned for like a day, for 8 hours, not even a day, like 8 hours? It was insane, man. Like, they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle the fact that they couldn't use TikTok, waste 20 hours a day watching TikTok, right? So
yeah, I get you, man.
I think shadow work is a form of coping. We're kind of getting off topic there, but it's a good way to identify those triggers and
for sure
those emotions, kind of get back on track.
No, for sure, man. Everything you said is either 90% I agree with, 90%. The other 10%, it's like, running out of time here, buddy. Have to speed things up here. But nah, man, for sure. Thank you for sharing that.
There's no time on a podcast. Come on.
There's
Joe Rogan here.
But any alibis before we move on to the last thing, man?
So what's the last thing? Can you remind me?
The last thing is the book recommendation and advice about the subject.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So any alibis before
I'm looking through. Oh, I'm just looking through my notes real quick. Make sure. I would say this, like, anybody that's watching this and is interested, or we piqued your interest in the shadow work, I would suggest looking into it. Go at your own pace. Practice patience and be, compassion. Be kind to yourself, because you're going to experience some difficult emotions, some very painful memories that you just have refused to address, right? For whatever reason. So if you do start this journey, understand that you're going to go through it, right? But, make sure you keep at it, and you understand that shadow work, it isn't about being perfect. It's about accepting yourself for who you are, and accepting those things. And if you're able to do that, you will see your life change dramatically. And it's not going to be instant. Again, this isn't instant ramen, right? You don't cook it for 3 minutes and you're good to go. No, this is going to take time, right? You're going to go through it. You're going to suffer. You're going to want to give up. And I would just tell you not to, right? Keep going through the process and keep, getting there. and, when, and on the other end of all that suffering and all that acknowledgement and all that work you're going to put into it, yeah, you're going to come out, I don't want to say feeling like $1,000,000, but you're going to be more accepting of yourself and willing to accept things that they are, and try to, worry about the things that you can control and the things that are outside of your realm of control, to just let go, right? And just brush it off and move on about your day. Good to go.
Oh, for sure, man. I'll add a quick note to that. Just disclaimer, we're not doctors or medical providers or anything like that. We're just two men talking about shadow work and our trials and tribulations with that and what we went through and what advice we can give you guys to, again, be the observer of your thoughts. If you can, see yourself in third person. If you're having a bad time with another colleague or by yourself, see yourself. What will your higher self do? A lot of people forget about their higher selves. Like, would you let you down? No, you would pick yourself up at one point in time. And just, if you're not going to do it for you, do it for the people who want you to succeed, your peers, your family, your significant other, your dog, your cat. Like, don't let them down. Be the better person. Be better for you, for your higher self, and you'll be surprised how much life changes after that. And yeah, that's my quick advice. But without further ado, man, what's this book you got?
Oh, so my books. Oh, can I do two? Can I
That's fine.
break the rules a little bit?
Yeah, bonus.
All right. So because of the topic we're on, right? Shadow work.
Yeah.
So I recommend, number one is, this is for anybody, right? This isn't anybody can do this. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people, you may have seen this on TikTok, maybe you haven't. This is where I found it. But the Shadow Work Journal, all right? I talked about the power of journaling. This book right here talks about everything that we've talked about and then some, and then it has a lot of cool prompts in here that you can fill out and kind of work through yourself, right? So there's a lot of good questions in here and it asks you stuff, and it's gonna really bring up some deep stuff. Great book. Well, more of a journal book, right? It's two. So check it out. It's really cheap. It's not even that expensive, but this is what I've been using to do my shadow work journey, and it's been a great tool to kind of keep me on pace. And you can do it at your own pace. It's not something you got to rush through. Yeah. I haven't even finished it myself, but it's been good. On to the more, on par with the podcast brand, Men versus Ego, right? I have a book here called No More Mr. Nice Guy, right? A proven plan for getting what you want in love, sex, and life. And this touches on shadow work as well, but it's more geared towards men. And it's really about, even though it says no more Mr. Nice Guy, it talks about, in this book, the author labels men as nice guys, but it's what we call a misnomer. It's not what it means, right?
Who's the author?
And I'll just give the author is Dr. Robert Glover. And I'll just give you an example just from one thing in the book, is that nice guys tend to give gifts with strings attached, hidden agendas, right? And then when they get rejected or they get, turned down and more of it could be applied to anything, but I'll just use relationships as an example, right? A guy likes a girl, he's buying her drinks or not. Like coffee. I bought you coffee, or don't worry about it. I got it for you. Or, yeah, I'll do this and that for you. Yeah, I'll take you to the airport. It's super inconvenient and out of my way, right? And then when, that person decides to, let me take a shot at this and gets rejected, they throw it back in their face. Well, I took you to the airport 2 hours away. I bought you coffee every day. Why don't you love me? Right? And they act out in a very aggressive and negative way. So yeah, it's just an example, and it teaches you how to identify these things about yourself and then how to address it. But anyways, great book. I suggest it to any man that's kind of going through life, kind of stuck, kind of upset, or not upset, but kind of not satisfied where they're at with life, in their love life, life in general, the relationships. Um, yeah, that's my
Thanks, man.
suggestion.
I like to put a quick caveat on there. Men, women, people that watch this podcast as well. And it's funny that you said that because the first thing that popped into my mind is one of the laws from 48 Laws of Power. Despise the free lunch. There's always a hidden agenda, even when they don't seem like, or they don't, it doesn't seem like there's a hidden agenda. There always is. I highly
Always.
recommend. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said always.
Yeah,
Everything,
always,
almost
man.
all humans, we kind of talked about this out at work, right? Where every interaction with somebody is almost transactional in some sort of way. Like, what are you getting out of it? What are
Yeah,
they getting out of it? So,
absolutely, man.
yeah.
What can you do for me? It's like you said, a transaction. So I highly recommend that book to anybody who's like psychology and human nature type of deal and getting the upper hand, right? And not to be naive anymore. It shows you not to be naive
Right.
and don't fall for the mask that people wear, right? Because people wear a mask, they take it off, they
There you
put it
go.
back on. So my recommendation, my recommended book is a book that's been recommended on this podcast twice, and it's my time to recommend it. It's called The Alchemist by Mr. Paulo Coelho. And in a nutshell, for me, this book has been around for a while. So for me, the book, when I read it, it showed me to go within, that everything that I need is within me. I don't have to look for outside validation. I don't have to get your attention. There's going to be people that don't like this podcast. Okay. And there's going to be people that do like this podcast. Thank you. And then there's going to be people who feel nonchalant about it. All right, man. Hey, to each their own. But it's about what
Right.
I what I want to bring to the viewer, what I think it's helpful. It's a personal growth podcast. It's not like freaking the best advice you can hear or anything like that. It's our adversities, it's our advice, it's humans, it's men, it's women, it's people. And for me, this book taught me to look inside myself for the treasure that Santiago was looking for. Definitely, I know my friend Ben and my friend Daisy, they live in different states. One is New York and the other one's in Chicago, but they both recommend that book too as well. And it's a good read for those who haven't read The Alchemist, the classic.
I'm gonna check it
But,
out. You
but
loan it
yeah,
to me?
man. Say again?
You gonna swap books, man? You read mine, I'll
Yeah,
read yours.
man. I'm cool. Yeah, yeah. Just
You do
disclaimer
a
out
little book
there.
swap.
Also, I'm sure I put it out there. I'm an Audible guy, so when I'm driving, when I'm at the gym, I like hearing my books. I don't really listen to music unless
Okay.
I'm in a chipper mood or going to the I don't know, some birthday or whatever. But I like listening to books, anything that can help my self development, man. But
Yeah.
Joey, Hail Mary, man. Anything else?
No, man. I again, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, man. It's you've reignited a passion of mine that I have long forgotten about. I was doing a podcast and really I enjoyed obviously doing all the camera work, the equipment, the gear, doing the production. I just wasn't feeling the topics, 100%. I couldn't be myself. And, you know, thank you again for sparking that passion again. And I look forward to, coming back on the show, maybe doing some more stuff, if the people want it. And if they don't, that's fine too. We'll give it to them anyways. Um,
You let me
but yeah,
know
man,
when,
I really appreciate it.
for sure, brother. You let me know whenever you have your own, and if you'll be so cordial to invite me, I'll go over there, man. You help me out so much, not just at work, um, but you upgraded my camera. Thank you very much. Thank you. If there's a reason why I don't look pixelated anymore, thank Mr. Joey Chacon came through. But yeah, man, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your advice, your POV, your
Absolutely.
point on this whole shadow work. Yeah, man, stay blessed. We'll see each other at work. But to our viewers, I got nothing else, man. Thank you for coming.